You have to understand accounting, and you have to understand the nuances of accounting. It's the language of business, and it's an imperfect language. But unless you're willing to put in the effort to learn accounting, how to read and interpret financial statements, you really shouldn't select stocks for yourself. Warren Buffett. What's up, YouTube? Kenny here, and today I want to break down a question from Kia. So Kia says, hey Kenny, I'm asking you on here in case other people are interested. What books would you recommend for investing, options trading, etc.? Ones that you've read and lived by. Kia, that's indeed a great question. The problem is I've read a lot of books, hundreds of books.
I'm not convinced.
Probably 100 on investing, because that's going to make for a good clickbait title. But do I live by them? But I'm going to give you 10 books within a roadmap that you could probably quote unquote live by. So anyways, I will break down 10 books. And that's because 10 books sounds like a great number to feed you. Because algorithm. So if you're new to this channel, and you are new to this channel because this is the first video, so let me introduce myself. My name is Kenny. I'm the co-founder of a data analytics firm. Also 20 years of service, combat veteran, 2 tours to Iraq, about 10 tours in special operations. That said, also have a media company, Redcliffe Research, equities research, and a subsidiary, Launch Window Research. So I never grew up around money, and in fact, my parents fled from Cambodia during a pretty crazy time during the killing fields, and I grew up in a refugee camp in Thailand. That said, when I got to America, I had to figure this out for myself. My parents did just fine putting food on the table, nothing to want for. My point is, though, that people I knew didn't know about money, didn't know about this idea or concept of debt and leverage and all those other things. So the first book in kind of my financial literacy journey was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that's by Robert Kiyosaki. The thing that I want people to take away from this book is it's an introduction to contrarian mindsets. So I don't want to spoil the book for you because it's generally a really fun read anyways. But essentially he goes into the contrarian mindset one, but the second piece is he thinks about assets a lot differently than your generally accepted accounting practices would. So thinking about assets in the way that he thinks about them is pretty cool, and it's pretty wild. So if you haven't read that book, definitely the first book in my journey. So the next book on this list is The Millionaire Mind. And Millionaire Mind should help you figure out how millionaires think. Not all of them, but there's a lot of frugality here that you might not correspond with being a millionaire. It's also the first book that I read that really digs into the data and statistics. And so when you unpack this book, the things that you should pull away from it is millionaires are often very frugal, and that you don't have to live a life of lavishness to have $1 million in net assets. So a little bit of a warning on this book. This book is indeed about growing your wealth very slowly. It's about capital preservation and capital accumulation that is very slow and deliberate. Don't lose money is like the number one goal in The Millionaire Mind, right? So it's about living frugally. It's the book that should teach you to not drink that latte. But I will say that I don't always think that way, and I don't think that it always serves you. For instance, if you're running a startup, you got to grow at all costs. You got to grow until the wheels fall off, right? So just be aware that this is a great book, but it does depend where you are on your journey. Some people it will resonate very well with, and some people, hey, throw it out with the bathwater. So the next book is Unshakable. And the only reason I put this in here is because he does a really good job of packing in what it means to be in an index fund, to show you the math behind it, and ultimately the idea that, hey, as long as you keep your money in the market over time, you're going to be just fine. So really not much more to it than that. If you don't understand what an index fund is or why the fees will kill you and burn you, this is the book for you. It also will teach you about diamond hands. It's the diamond hands book before diamond hands. So the next book on the list is The 4-Hour Workweek. It talks about time efficacy, but it also talks about a lot of interesting concepts that you may not have realized that will help you save a lot of money. Rent the Lamborghini instead of buy it, that type of thing. I'm really simplifying here, but essentially, the experience is the thing you're looking for, not the thing. And so, if you conceptualize that, you'll have a lot more money to do other things like invest and build businesses. So definitely an interesting book to read. It's really about time efficiency. But that said, it's still a very important book on my journey, so I still got to recommend it. So Fooled by Randomness is the next book on the list. And essentially it's a book about large data, but really, truly, down to the heart of it, it's a book about luck. It's a book that tells you, hey, you might be unreasonably lucky in your life and you might not even know it. On the inverse, a lot of the people who are super successful in life have just been very, very, very lucky. So this book breaks down the numbers behind that, and it really gives you a sense of how to think about numbers and how to think about these like long tail events. So if you don't know what I mean by that, it just means that there is asymmetry to risk and reward at times. And if you can identify that, you can profit very well from it, whether it's life or the stock market. So the next book on the list is this book right here, and it's Warren Buffett, The Interpretation of Financial Statements. So this book is very basic, but the reason why I'm pulling it up and bringing it to you near the end here is because it's a fundamental kind of story about how Warren Buffett thinks through his kind of assessment of companies. And so it's really helpful to understand and think about how those folks are doing it. Whether or not you're a financial and fundamental guy, or if you're just a technical trader, there's always counterparty to the trade. And so if your counterparty is a value investor like Warren Buffett, you still need to know how he thinks. And of course, it's really useful when you're trying to take those value trades yourself. So the next book on the list is When Genius Failed. And so this is basically understanding arbitrage systems and processes and thinking about counterparties at another level. So thinking about how the order book is structured and how arbitrage may or may not work. So essentially, this book is about a bunch of PhDs that were crushing it for the first 3 years. They had something of 21% the first year, 43% the second year, and then 41% the third year. If you know anything about the stock market, those are bonkers returns. That's almost on par with Renaissance technologies. That said, in 1998, they lost over $4.6 billion in less than 4 months. This is because they had super leverage and super exposure to a lot of financial instruments that are about to crash. And so, if you're thinking Bill Wong's running around here trying to throw away his money, there were plenty of people throwing away their money in the beginning before you. And these are smart folks. I love the title. I love the fact that you get a bunch of PhDs in a room and they go ahead and make the entire stock market insolvent and need to get bailed out by the Fed. Just saying, great book. You need to read it because you need to understand what you're playing with, and you need to understand the rules of the game. And if you understand the rules of the game, you accept the rules of the game, you realize that people have been trying to break the game, then it's a great book to understand. It's the first book that I would call intermediate to advanced. So the next book on the list is the Handbook of Technical Analysis. It's a practitioner's comprehensive guide to technical analysis. It breaks down literally everything. If you're wondering why people draw a line a certain way, this will have it for you. In fact, if you look here, you can see this is just talking about subjectivity, something that a lot of people don't think about. And this is literally like page 20 of 700. So, it has a lot of great information in here, and it really unpacks every question that you could have had. And so if you're guessing about what the percentages of things are, if you're guessing why people draw a line the way they do, especially CMTs or certified market technicians, this is the book for you. It's going to answer all those questions and more. It's essentially a compression of the 3 CMT books that you need to get your chartered market technician license. And so it's a really great read. I always go back to it from time to time to really understand fundamentally what all the professional market technicians are looking at. So the next paper here is the Agony and the Ecstasy, and it's a JP Morgan paper that essentially talks about the concentration of stock positions and how there is a risk to reward for that. Obviously the Agony and then the Ecstasy. But more than that, what it did for me is it shows you that there's a ton of companies that tend to go out of business. And in terms of the S&P 500, look at this chart right here. So as you can see here, this is the cumulative number of companies that are removed from the S&P 500 due to distress. And it's amazing to see how many companies over the years actually get taken out. The point to this is we all know that 90% of businesses fail, but even 90% of really strong businesses get taken out of the market. And finally, if you've gotten this far, there is a Norwegian University of Science and Technology paper by Jan Ivar Larsen. Essentially, it's talking about predicting stock prices using technical analysis and machine learning. The reason why I'm recommending it and why I think it's really good is because when they go ahead and posit their thesis, they have to explain conceptually how they're structuring it. They got to explain their assumptions. And because they have to explain all that and how it formulaically works within the broader concepts, it helps you understand exactly how somebody would think about the markets if they were a quant, if they were an algorithm, right? So they're essentially structuring an algorithm to trade, and thus you will understand that piece of the counterparty. And the final book is a bonus because I've talked about it a lot on our channel. It's called When Wolves Bite Back. It's by Scott Wapner. It's essentially about Bill Ackman, who was trying to short Herbalife, and Carl Icahn, who, hey, put in a lot of money into Herbalife to just bankrupt Bill Ackman. Essentially, it's a feud, and it's literally a feud with billions of dollars on the line, but it just goes to show you how important it is to understand party and counterparty risk. It's the same thing with Melvin Capital and GameStop, right? There's a party and there's a counterparty. It's very real. People are going out after your money. It's a gladiatorial arena. I know I didn't talk much about that here, but it's something that we harp on at Red Cliff Research. There's a party and the counterparty. The trades are not free. Over time, does it work out? Yes, because you're using generations behind you to buy the stock and up that value because they have to get into the system, right? So that said, that's kind of a book that I really think is important too. That puts me over the limit, gets me to 11, but hey, threw it in there as a bonus. So I want to leave you with this. These were 10 books in a roadmap that was haphazard for me. So I kind of try to concentrate them based on the skills or kind of the priorities that help me learn specific things about investing in the stock market. That said, you are probably way above this. You probably are going to brush a lot of this stuff away. But if some of these things are interesting to you, or there are gaps in your understanding or gaps in your knowledge, then maybe consider picking some of these books up. Anyways, that's all I have for you today. Thanks, and we will see you again soon. Live for the journey, all. Bye.